Welcome to Shrink Chicks. Today we are discussing a highly requested topic, dating, with our amazing guest, Allison Raskin. Allison is a New York Times bestselling author, relationship coach, and mental health advocate, in addition to being an accomplished screenwriter and content creator. She co-hosts the popular podcast Just Between Us and created the Emotional Support Lady Instagram and Substack. She also holds a master's degree in psychology from Pepperdine University and a BFA in screenwriting from USC. She has a new book, Save the Date, coming out in April. We cannot wait to talk with you about the dating scene, breakups, being single, and more. Welcome, Allison. We're so excited to have you.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for reading that full bio. It's quite a mouthful.
Do you feel uncomfortable sitting, you know, people like saying nice things about you and you're just sitting there smiling. Like when someone's singing happy birthday and you're like, do I sing too? I'm deeply uncomfortable in this.
I always sing.
I'm a ham. I love attention.
Right.
Like that's just a thing I've accepted about myself. I'm more always interested on which bio is being read. Because there's a bunch circulating. And sometimes I'll be like, oh, that's very old. So
how did we do? We did a current one.
This was the current one. Yes, thank you.
Nikki would never lead us astray. If you want conscientious, we said one of the things we do to get an interview. This is like so crazy, right? So we own this therapy practice. To get an interview, you have to take a personality test because we have so many people that apply. It's sort of fucked up, but we have to. There's certain things you have to do. Right, to like, you know, weed down the pool a little bit, and we have like these general ideas of like, you know, a certain score, like conscientiousness, right? And except for that, I would not get hired by us because my conscientiousness is so low, but Nikki's is so high, so she would never pick the wrong bio.
She's on so good.
My bio would be like, Allison has thought about feet fetish websites one time, and she maybe laughs about dating. Like mine would be bad.
I'm not a fan of personality tests, not to start off controversial.
No, that's fine. Please. It's reasonable.
But I had to take one during my master's, and like we had to take it on ourselves to like learn how to administer it. And we were going over the scores, my professor was like, and women tend to score very high on agreeableness. And I looked at my score and I was like, oh no.
Oh, that is funny.
Mine's like highly reactive, very low conscientiousness, up in the clouds, and a different planet.
Up in the clouds.
You know, it's great.
It's really wonderful. So Allison, tell us a little bit about like how you got into this. Like, tell us about your story a little bit.
So I have a kind of unconventional story that's sort of I'm in a lot of different spaces, but I think that the through line is the mental health through line for me. So I'm someone that's had OCD since I was 4 years old. I got it through pandas, which is basically when you strep infection. Thank you for knowing what that is. Yes. A lot of people do not, including professionals. So, and so it activated really quickly. It came on so severely. My parents thought I might have a brain tumor. Like it was kind of like a life-changing event. So I've been in and out of therapy, medication, just like not dealing with my mental health was never an option for me. It was something that I always had to be, you know, cognizant of and addressing. But what I really wanted to do as a career was be a comedy writer. And so I was lucky enough to get into USC screenwriting, and I was sort of like trying to go the old school TV film path, only to really get a break through BuzzFeed Video back in 2014, 2015. And from there, I was able to grow my YouTube channel Just Between Us. And so I got my foot in the door in like the Hollywood industry. I sold and developed shows, had the YouTube channel, had 2 YA novels I did with my comedy partner. But around 2019, I was like, you know, I'd always been talking about my mental health. That had always been so much of my YouTube channel. I had really started to position myself and feel comfortable claiming the term mental health advocate. But I also noticed that like there'd been this change in how I showed up in relationships. And so I decided that I wanted to kind of explore that change in my first nonfiction book, Overthinking About You, navigating romantic relationships when you have anxiety, OCD, and or depression. Mm. And then in 2020, I started my master's program in psychology because I was like, maybe I'm going to be a therapist. You know, the entertainment industry is so unclear. It's like very unstable. And then throughout the journey of getting that degree, because I was originally in the marriage and family therapist track, I realized that it didn't really make sense for me to be a traditional therapist because there's so much of myself online. Like it doesn't allow for the safety of a client to feel like I'm this blank slate. I just, in certain populations that you have to work in during your practicum or maybe when you're getting your licensure, it just, I felt like it wasn't going to be appropriate for me or for them. And so I decided that I was going to just shift to getting a master's in just psychology and really be able to just use the knowledge to make my work as a writer, working in these spaces and talking about these things just like more credible, that I'm not just like speaking through my own experience anymore, right? Yes. I have a broader base of knowledge. And so then I wrote my second nonfiction book, I Think Conversations About Modern Marriage. That was an examination of like how marriage has changed and how we can personalize marriage in today's society in a way that will actually really benefit us versus the old school patriarchal institution that was rather harmful. And then in November, I was like, okay, all of these things are sort of leading me to wanting to work with individuals, wanting to have that one-on-one experience. And so that's when I launched my coaching business, which I think is a really awesome resource for people that are looking for coaching, because people that like the buy-in of knowing who I am, right? And that's not going to be everybody. That's not everyone is going to want as directive approach. Not everyone is going to want to be able to know about my broken engagement, my relationship history, my mental health struggles. But for some people, that actually is, I think, what makes the relationship potentially more powerful than a more traditional therapist-client relationship, just based on personality and people's experiences.
Yeah. Wait, so tell us about Save the Date.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I forgot what I'm supposed to be promoting. Yeah, so obviously I've been, focusing on the relationships of it all, right? And so in addition to having these nonfiction books, I also I've now become a romance writer. So April 8th, my first rom-com novel, Save the Date, comes out, which is based on my own broken engagement that happened in 2020, where my fiance like abruptly left me with like really no reason. And I was like, oh no, this is horrible for me personally, but also like professionally, like I have a book coming out about relationships. Like this is like kind of a nightmare. And my dad started making jokes that I should just like find a new groom in time for my wedding date. And I was like, Dad, that's like bananas for a real person to do, but it's an incredible premise for a novel. And then Save the Date was born, and our protagonist is Emma Moskowitz, who is a couples therapist with a big YouTube channel who kind of conducts this social experiment to see if she can find a new groom in time for her wedding date, to sort of prove that she doesn't have to give up on her life plan, and also kind of question some Western societal beliefs around marriage and how much time you need to know someone before you get married.
That's awesome. I cannot wait to read this.
Thank
me
you.
Too. I'm so excited. It's so funny. I have this friend who she's in the dating scene now, and we always say that she, the way that she should like hit on guys is to go up to them and say, "Hey, like, do you want to be my date to this wedding?" And they'll be like, "Yeah, like whose wedding?" You'll be like, my own wedding."
I would advise against that, but I think it's a fun experiment,
right? See what happens. You never know, right?
Well, that's good. So we want to hear from the dating coach. Listen, the number one question we get about dating: why is it so terrible? And is it actually worse than it was before? So many people be like, "Oh, dating's horrible now." Is it actually worse? Do we feel like it's worse? And why is it so fucking terrible?
So I think there are a lot of factors at play. One is that it is not a race to the altar in the same way that it was for earlier generations. And so, yes, like our parents' generations, like boomers and above, did not necessarily date as much as we did because there was a societal expectation to like settle down sooner. But that doesn't necessarily mean they had happier marriages, right? Like we have the highest divorce rate in boomers, and historically marriages have been more of like a business deal than like something that is like so emotionally fulfilling for people. So I think what's happened is now that people are dating to sort of find a good partner, there's kind of choice overload also happening, right? So in all of the good that comes from not feeling pressured to just find someone and stick with them, we have now kind of pendulum swung to, I have to find the perfect person for me. And if they do not hit every single thing on my list, then I shall keep looking, because my phone provides me with thousands of people that I could date. And so I really think that the dating apps are an incredible resource, but when they're used incorrectly, and not used productively, they can sort of feed into this idea that dating is impossible, that there is never going to be anyone for me, that, oh, this person's okay, but what if I just kept scrolling and there was another person? And so I really think it's important to be super intentional and, productive when dating, or else you're really going to fall into some bad habits, and also just like some bad feelings and associations with it.
Yes. I mean, you basically answered this question, but I just wanted to say it because it was so funny. Someone said, who peed in the dating pool? That is hilarious.
And then they said straight cis men on dating apps are the worst.
Well, I think a huge problem on dating apps is the culture. Like, what is appropriate behavior on a dating app? It needs to be reexamined, because this idea that you just ghost people, that you'll talk to someone for forever and then not actually meet up with them. I think some people use it as a game. It's like, how many matches can I get, rather than like, I'm actually looking for a real person and partner. And so, I think some of that is just kind of what naturally happened, but I also think some of that is like the apps encouraging it and the way that their interfaces are built. And, there's always a possibility that new apps can come out that are more productive, that are better, but it's hard. And like, it's not something where you can snap your fingers. But I also think so much of life is harder now.
Yeah.
Right? Like 2025, not great.
Right.
So the idea that dating would be easy peasy during this like time of huge political divide, so much economic insecurity, just like the collective trauma of COVID, it makes sense that this is like, people aren't like having the best time.
Yeah.
Okay, wait. So a few minutes ago, you said something. I believe the sentence you said was, if you don't, when you're not using the apps correctly. So what's the correct way to use them?
It depends on what you're looking for, right?
Okay.
So if we're looking for fun, casual dating, hookups, that's different. If you're looking for a long-term partner, I think it's really important to put time and effort into your profile, and to have things on your profile that can invite conversation, right? Because if it's just different photos of your face, there's not much for people to comment on or to start a conversation off of. So I think it can be really helpful to use those photos to show what your life is actually like, right? And to show you in your activities, to show you in your community, your interests, to really allow the prompts to show a bit of your personality, and to take the time to really curate a profile. And then I think that when you're looking at other people's profile, you have to be smart about who you are engaging with. If there is a clear red flag on someone's profile, but they are cute, I don't care. Like, there's no point in us like matching with someone where you know that they don't want kids and you want kids, or you know that they like don't drink, but you're a huge social drinker and you know that's an important thing for you. Like, to really just like have some strict guidelines and sort of stick by them. And then I really encourage people to always have a phone call or a FaceTime before they go on an in-person date. Because if you go on an in-person date and you have a bad date after bad date after bad date, and you're taking up your entire night or your day, and it's like this huge time commitment, your association with dating is going to be pretty negative.
Yeah.
Okay, wait. The next listener question is, what to tell yourself when the effort of dating just doesn't seem worth it anymore? It feels like that's what you're talking about. Like, you just get burnt out.
Oh, absolutely. So that's part of why is these guardrails around burning out. It's not wasting time with people that are wrong for you. It's screening people out before you meet them in person so that you're only going on in-person dates with people you already know you have a basic level of compatibility with, and you can hold a 5-minute conversation because you've already talked to them on the phone. So right there, you're going to like screen a lot out so that your in-person is less but like higher quality, hopefully. And also another big thing is not to get into endless online interaction without planning a date, right? Like we don't need to be just talking to someone for 3 weeks before meeting them in person. I mean, sometimes that happens, but that because of scheduling, but then you're scheduling phone calls, you're scheduling FaceTimes, like texting for weeks with someone you haven't actually spoken to feels like not a great approach if you're looking for something serious. And in terms of like, you're like, this feels like too much effort. The reality is like, not everyone needs to be partnered.
Right.
For some people, the effort required in being partnered is not worth it. And they are happier on their own. Or they would be equally happy in a partnership, but like not, but it's equal, right? So why put in all of the work if they're equally happy non-partnered? So that's a big shift I think we need to make as a society, is that like it's worth it for some people and it's not worth it for other people. And you really have to sit with yourself and figure out what is it for me? And if you sit with yourself and you're like, you know what? I really do want to be partnered. Like the lifestyle of partnership is something that I value and that I think I would thrive in and is a way I want to build my life. Then you just have to keep putting in the effort. In the same way that you would in your career, in your fertility journey, in saving for a house, because you've realized that it is important to you. And to honor yourself, you kind of have to keep going.
I love that you're saying that because I think, society puts such a pressure around being partnered, right? That this is what you're supposed to be doing. And it's right for some people and it's not right for other people at periods of time in your life, right? That could change, that could fluctuate. So I just like love the validation around that. And also, I think we've gotten all this messaging around if it's right, it should be easy, right? Like it should just happen, or there should be some
That's
sort
ridiculous.
of like meet cute that happens, right?
Yeah.
And so
we've been brainwashed to
we
think
have.
that, right?
And right, like all these movies we watch, oh, you're just gonna like meet someone in a coffee shop. But I love how you're saying if it's important to you, you putting the effort in that you would put into your job, into getting a house, into all of those other things. That's the level of effort that it might take in order to be partnered and find someone that's like really the right match for you. So like just that piece of it, because I find that people really battle that of like, oh, it should be easy, or like I should just be able to meet someone on the street and then we connect and then our values align. Like that is so difficult for that.
Then you feel like shame and broken,
Yeah.
right? Like, so then I must be wrong if this isn't happening for me.
Right.
But I don't think it's happening for most people.
Right.
And for the people that it happened for, because we all know that anecdotal evidence ruins lives, is that like they just got lucky.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? Like they just got really lucky, and like that's wonderful for them, but that's not the full story, and that's not most stories.
Yes.
Oh gosh, I know you hear that story of like someone who like fell in love with the person that sat next to on an airplane, and then you're like, I would literally rather die than talk to every person I'm sitting next to on an airplane. But you're like, but what if I don't? Right? I hear people say this all the time. Well, if I don't go out on Friday, or if I don't do this, then I'm gonna miss the one, right? Like I'm gonna miss all these opportunities. And for the most part, it doesn't happen.
Right.
Well, it's that's what's really hard, is like the magical thinking that can sort of come into dating. And you want to create a life where you are very open to meeting new people, right? So like there's openness there. You're on the apps. You've told your friends that you're looking to be set up. I think that's super underutilized for people. You have maybe even told your coworkers, like you're moving through the world with openness. And then Friday night, let's do an activity that you would have fun either way, but you will go into it open. But the sole purpose isn't just to meet someone. It's not just, I'm going to this bar that I hate because I hear that there are men there. You know, it's, I'm going to go out because I'm being open. I'm putting myself out there. I'm joining this group. I'm joining this kickball team, but also I like kickball. You have to have like both those things, or else it can be just so discouraging to come home from that kickball game and be like, well, I didn't meet my husband and I had to play kickball.
Fair. Play any
Wait,
sport.
I like kickball.
Oh, you do? Since
I
when?
can fuck with that.
What?
Like,
You should
I
start-
just feel like if you're like, oh, a Friday night, like play kickball, like I would do a kickball league on a Friday night.
Start a kickball league up. What's taking you so
No,
long?
starting an activity is not something I like to do.
Right.
Being in
You
charge,
want-
more responsibility in my life is not anything.
Right.
I
You want to like tack on. You want to tack on to it.
I'm a tack on kind of gal.
Yeah,
when it
that's
comes to
fair.
that,
I love
right?
that.
Yes. Here's a great question. I just went through a breakup, 30 years old. We lived together. When do I go back after? How do I get back in the dating scene?
This is so personal. I think that I would need more context. I think that what happened around the breakup matters, because sometimes you are grieving while you're in the relationship because it's been ending for a while. And so you are maybe ready to date sooner than you would be if you hadn't had that kind of like pre-grieving time. But it's really about how you're feeling around yourself and how you're feeling around relationships. So if you are still in a, really dark place where you are just, you feel like, you need to heal and you feel like you're not ready, then you're probably not ready. But if you feel like, oh, I feel ready, but like, will people think it's weird that I'm dating so soon? Then who cares, like, what other people think? Like it's okay to move at the pace that feels right for you. And then I also think a huge misconception is that you have to be completely over your previous partner before you enter a new relationship. And that's just not true. I was very much still in love with my ex-fiance when I met my current husband. I say current husband, like I'm hoping only husband, but you know what I mean.
Nikki, keep that one in though. That's
That
funny.
is good. That is funny.
You're like, well, listen, I will say we had, when we were still pre-licensed, we're getting our licensure. We had like do all these supervision hours, right?
Yeah.
We had a supervisor that said to us, in all relationships, you are on a lease with an option to renew.
Mm-hmm.
No one is ever yours. It does not matter if you're married. It does not matter if you have kids
Absolutely.
together. It doesn't matter that you own a fucking llama together. At the end of the day, someone can wake up tomorrow and leave.
That's like the whole premise of I Do, I think.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
like that, like, why get married when someone can leave?
Yeah.
And the answer is because of how beautiful the life can be that you built
Yeah.
together, and that the risk is often worth it, but also that you can survive if it doesn't last forever.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the piece that I feel like we don't talk about enough. That
Yeah,
like, yes, it will
absolutely.
be hard. Yes, it's not ideal, but like you will survive.
Yes.
And I mean, obviously, unfortunately, there's some cases where it's more dire, but for the most part, especially as divorce is becoming more, just common and not the same like stain on someone's
Yeah.
reputation, while it's really difficult, it doesn't need to be life ending.
Yeah. Someone,
All right.
Someone wrote in, have you heard the idea that you really start dating someone in year 2? What are your thoughts about that?
So I think the idea is that like you don't really know someone until you've been with them a certain amount of time, right?
I've never heard that.
Yeah,
haven't either.
because you guys sent the question, so I did have to Google what that was.
Right,
I suspected I knew what
You
it was
looked at this
getting
before
at.
we did.
Yeah, I suspected that's what it implied. I mean, it was the AI answer, so who knows if that was true. But yeah, I mean, look, I think so much is how old you are and what's happened during your relationship. So if you've been with someone for a year and a half, but you're 22 years old and nothing bad has happened during that year and a half, then you might not really know how that person behaves during times of stress, times of loss, times of hardship. And so like, parts of them, but there's probably parts of them they don't even yet know about themselves.
Right.
But then if you meet someone and you're both 32, and during those 6 months of knowing them, one of you loses your job, the other one loses a parent, and you get a dog together, like you're just going to see more of how this person is in more aspects of their life. So this idea that it's like the amount of time, I think, is really kind of like harmful and oversimplified. And it, to me, it is much more about your stage of life and also what has gone on during that relationship that you've been in.
Mhm.
It also, it doesn't take into account like the fact that like even if you've been with someone for a really long time and you know them at a period of time in both of your lives, like you change as you
Yeah.
grow. And, how they may have reacted to something in their 20s might be very different than how they react to something in their 40s. And
Hopefully.
so, right, hope one would hope.
Based on how most of us acted in our 20s.
Exactly. One would hope. um, but I think that that's also a common that there's a lot of fear around, well, like, I need to know exactly who this person is before I like partner up with them. But like, you're going to change over time. They're going to change over time. And just like the adaptability piece, I think is another important thing that we don't really talk
Yeah.
about.
Well, I think one of my favorite Esther Perel quotes is, all of us will be married many times in our life, and if you're lucky, it's to the same person.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, so like I've been married for almost 9 years now. Who I was married to 9 years ago is very different to who I'm married to now, with two careers and kids, like it's just totally fucking different. And thank God we do not act like we did 15 years ago when we met.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness.
Because there
that's
was,
the
for
part that
me,
you
too much
can't.
coke and alcohol involved. So
I mean, that's the uncertainty piece that you can never escape, right? Is like, I got married to John in August of 2023, and I was like, I know who John is right now.
yeah.
And I like this John, but I have no idea who John is going to become.
Yeah.
And like, we hope that we grow together or that we change in ways that make sense and that are, objectively positive, but you just don't know. And I think that this idea that like, oh, you got divorced 17 years later, you chose wrong. It's like, no, I didn't. Who we were 17 years ago were really compatible and aligned. And then
Yeah.
life happens and people change and it no longer made sense to be together.
Right.
Mm. It's such an interesting good point. Okay, so well, I love, you also talked about earlier, like, you're looking at someone's dating profile and they'll say like doesn't want kids, but you want kids. We go sometimes at a dating thinking we're going to change someone, and it gives us
do that.
It gives us such a false sense of control, right? Like, well, I can change him. I'll fix it. I'll convince him to want children. I'll convince him to stop drinking. That'll work.
Look, sometimes it does. And again, we're back to like the
Great for
anecdotal
them.
evidence. Like, my one of my best friends, his sister, like the relationship she's in now with this guy is totally different than what it was when it started. And like, it's like you just wait it out and they become ready to settle down. And it's like sometimes,
Right.
but a lot of times no. And the other element we don't talk about enough, I think, is like what it feels like to be the partner that is being pressured to change. Right? Like to know that your partner doesn't really like who you are right now and is just wanting you to become someone else so that they can fully commit to you. Like that creates like not the best dynamic.
Yeah.
And so I really encourage people to sit with them, and I work with clients who are really unsure about, is this the right person for me? And I say, if nothing changed, if this was the person that you had always and they didn't reach their full potential in their career, or you never got to that deeper connection that you've been longing, if this was the relationship as it stands now and this is the person, is this enough for you? And I think that's a much more productive approach than like waiting around for someone to change, which might never happen.
Yeah. Well, the one of the things you mentioned earlier, I just wanted to highlight the thing about the apps that, I guess is present, but I never really thought about, is that like you have to get very clear with your values and what you want before you meet someone, and to not, like, and I think sometimes like when that's not present, those things can get blurred for you because you're like, I like this person, I'm attracted to them. We connect in certain ways, but the apps
Maybe
really,
I won't care about having kids then.
right,
I'll
maybe I
change for
won't
them.
care. Maybe that will change, right? And so, but the apps really ask you to get very clear on what your values are and what you're interested in the future. I guess certain apps, I don't know if all the apps do. But that piece I think is really important because you have to sit with yourself and ask yourself those questions first before you're meeting anyone to make sure that those things align for you.
It's so true, and I encourage people to make 3 lists. So and I think a lot of people only do 2, and then the third one I think is really important. So it's what do I absolutely need? Like, what do I need? What is a deal breaker? And what do I want but isn't necessary?
Oh, wow.
Because I think a lot of people clump a lot of that third column into what do I need. So, like, for example, I'll say, like, maybe you love to ski and you ski all the time. And so you're like, I need someone that also skis. And it's like, not really. Like,
No.
that would be nice, but like you could just go ski by yourself or with your friends. And like, that's really, it becomes in our head a necessity, but really the necessities are, do we have shared values? Do they make me laugh? Do we have the same goals for our future? The other stuff that sometimes we're like, they've got to be into football. It's like, no. Or like even things around like that they have to be a certain that they have to be really close with their family, right? Like, I think sometimes people will think that that's so important. But really, if you're someone that's really close with your family, what you're looking for is someone that understands and respects that is more important than if they're super close with their family, because who knows the dynamics of their family? That's not something that they picked.
Right.
Yeah.
That like might be a pain point for them. That might be something that's been really hard. And actually being brought into your family could be so wonderful and healing for them. But if you immediately like hear like, yeah, I'm not that close with my parents, and you're like, well, that's not for me, you're missing out on this person who might like really want that in their life. But unfortunately, where it's born into a circumstance where that wasn't, tenable.
Yeah, that's a really good distinction.
Yeah, I love that
I
one.
think, to make. Okay, I think we have time for.
Wait, can I
Yeah, you
choose?
go.
I
You
have one I'm
choose.
dying to know your answer
Okay,
to.
go. I'm ready.
Because I think a lot of people have this advice on approaching the do you want kids convo when you're at risk for aging out before meeting a spouse. Aging out, which people act like is 30, but as a reminder, my mother had me at 43. So but the question is, right, like I think people are always like, am I coming on too strong? When can I bring this up? This is important. Let's say that I didn't see it on your dating profile. How fast do people get to that? How unsexy is that? How do I handle it?
I think one of like the most harmful impacts of the patriarchy is and I don't know if this person is a woman or socialized as female, but I'm guessing because of the aging out part.
Yeah.
Like, is this idea that women are not allowed to say, I want a relationship, I want a marriage, I want family.
Yeah.
Why are we not allowed to say that? Like, it doesn't mean that you're saying, and I need it with you,
right
Mr.
now,
guy
tonight.
I met 1 minute ago, right? It's not saying like I need it with anyone that I could possibly meet, and you happen to be the person in front of me. It's just saying these are my goals for myself, and before we bother to go down this path, are our goals aligned? Because if they're not, then like I'd rather like get to know someone else. Right. So I really lean towards having those conversations early and making the distinction between this is what I want for myself versus I know already that this is what I want with you.
Yeah. So okay, when you say early, can they say it on date 1?
Yes.
Okay. That's what people want to know. I mean, I feel like, people are so scared. Am I allowed to bring this up? But you're so right? Like it's been deemed you're automatically like, I'm crazy if I say this.
No, why would that be
And
crazy?
men have told women that for years, right? Like,
and if someone reacts, if you're out with a 35-year-old woman and you're on a first date with her and she goes, yeah, I really want to have kids. So, I'm hoping to, to find my partner soon so that like we can have time together and have time to do that. And they go, well, that's bananas. What? Why are you on a date with a third?
Gotta
Like,
get out.
what's your goal here, buddy?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
this is the guy that is never this is the guy that at 43 is going to settle down with a 26-year-old. Do you know what I mean? This is not the guy that you should be on this second date with anyway.
Right. Like it gives you really good information if they're
Definitely.
having a reaction to that.
Mm-hmm.
God, that
And
is
I would
good.
say men should also examine themselves of why that freaks them out so quickly.
Right.
Right.
Like,
And
what
then they
is that?
shouldn't be
Yeah.
dating women of that age group.
Right.
then.
Yeah.
Right.
Allison, we play a game on ShrinkChicks called Calling BS, where we ask every person to come in to call some bullshit in their field. So today, call some BS, call some bullshit.
I do not think that you're going to be shocked with what I'm bringing to you. I'm calling bullshit on the idea of soulmates. I do not believe in soulmates at all. I think that we are so compatible with so many different people. I think that really the idea of this deep connection with someone is something that you build over time rather than instantly having upon meeting. And I think that it perpetuates this idea that if something is not quite right in a relationship, then that must mean it's the wrong relationship. When in reality, show me a couple where it's 100%. Show me a couple where there isn't some bumps between the connection, the relationship, the dynamic. And again, I'll be like, I think they're lying.
Calling some bullshit on that relationship.
Yes,
Right.
The satisfaction might be 100%, right? They might say, I'm 100% satisfied with my partner. I'm 100% certain this is the person I want to be with. But what actually goes on day to day, there are going to be bumps.
Absolutely. Allison, thank you so much. Before we let you go, tell our listeners where they can find you.
Yes, you can find me on my podcast, Just Between Us. I also really recommend checking out my Substack, Emotional Support Lady, where I talk all things mental health. You can look for me as a relationship coach at AllisonRaskin.com. And then please get my book, Save the Date, which is going to be available everywhere April 8th and is available for pre-order now. It is a rom-com, very heavy on the com, but also talks a lot kind of about this stuff and, what it really means to go into marriage and what's important.
Amazing.
That's
Allison,
awesome.
thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. This was a blast.
So fun. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Shrink Chicks.
We'll see you back here next week for another session.
In the meantime, if you want a question answered or a topic discussed, follow us on Instagram at ShrinkChicks. And if you're looking to get connected with a therapist like us to start or continue your therapeutic journey, visit thetherapygroup.com. Just fill out a contact form on our website, and we will personally match you with one of our amazing therapists. And for all of our therapists and group practice owners out there, we also offer group practice consulting.
And if you're looking to support yourself further and support our show, check out our amazing merch options at shrinkchicks.com/merch and our Know Yourself, Grow Yourself journal on Amazon. Also, if you'd be so kind, we'd love a rating, review, and for you to share with a friend or an enemy or a mother-in-law, honestly, whoever needs it, so that we can keep reaching more people on our mission to bring mental health topics to your ears every week.
Thanks for being here with us. And don't forget to grow yourself. You got to know yourself.